Today, I'm coming to the final episode in this little series I've called Jots and Tittles on legitimizing the authority of the offices held by our political figures when they are elected. And I want to build on what I said last time, just as a little bit of refresher, is that there's a distinction between Christian liberty and political liberty. And you'll recall that I quoted William Blackstone as saying that political or civil liberty is the very end and scope of the Constitution, and rightly understood, consists in the power of doing whatever the laws permit. Well, what if the law permits you to murder babies? What if the law permits two people of the same sex to enter into what the state calls a marital relationship? Is that civil liberty? To add on top of that question, recall what the good Professor George Fisher, Reverend Fisher at Yale, wrote in 1864. And we'll get a hint now to the answer to that question. He says the management of the state doesn't belong among the original rights of man. It's no violation of natural rights when political power is lodged with a few or one man. And then notice he made this statement: provided the great ends of government are accomplished. You recall he also wrote, let political power be distributed to the few or to the many or to all, or be concentrated in the hands of one person. It's conceivable that every natural right may be left intact and be safe under the aegis of government, whose office it is to preserve it from infraction. Now, I suggested earlier that a proper understanding of the Trinity and how to apply that doctrine to preserve those rights between the majority and the minority, to preserve the rights of every individual and those of humanity, all of which is reflecting our understanding of the Trinity, right? And I did a podcast on how I don't think ministers understand the nature of the state statutes that define marriage without regard to sex is a Trinitarian problem. But let me conclude this by answering how civil liberty is properly protected with these ideas, as opposed to what would seem to be better, that we have to all consent to the law. Because you remember, Professor Fisher said, well, even if you did that, rights can be violated, and they are. And here's the proper answer to that: because all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge are found in the mystery of God, of the Father, and of Christ. And here's what I'd said in a previous episode, and with this I'll wrap it up. I said we mistakenly think that we alone and autonomously appoint officers by elections, but God in his providence, through Christ's administration of his offices, is also at work, because in him we live and move and have our being. See, that too needs to be applied to our understanding of all forms of liberty. And then I quoted John Calvin from book 4, I think it is, chapter 20 of the Institutes, where he says, with respect to the magistrate, the official, the public official, how will they dare admit iniquity into their tribunal when they are told it is the throne of the living God? How will they venture to pronounce an unjust sentence with that mouth, which they understand to be an ordained organ of divine truth? And then this statement that I highlighted back in that previous episode: with what conscience will they subscribe impious decrees with that hand which they know has been appointed to write the acts of God? In a word, if they remember that they are the vicegerents of God, it behooves them to watch with all care, diligence, and industry, that they may in themselves exhibit a kind of image of the divine providence, guardianship, goodness, benevolence, and justice. I love the reference to the image of God because we are all made in the image of God, and we will communicate, we will reveal some understanding of the image of God. And I believe if those who hold public office understand they are under the kingly rights and the administration of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and they will give an image of what it means to look like God, then they will keep the laws within the bounds of God's law. And that way, civil liberty will flourish. I hope you've enjoyed the series.